Well, hello there, guys. Welcome to the Black Doctor Talk podcast. I am Dr. Christopher Holmes, your host and member of the Black Doctoral Network. Well, today I have another phenomenal guest. I never let you guys down. I keep bringing in the best and the brightest that we have here for BDN. And my guest today is Dr. Matthew Wilmot, who is a multi-talented psychologist and educator whose intersectionality and curiosity for knowledge has led this big city guy from Toronto all the way down to rural Waterloo and then suburban Ohio. We got a lot of ground to cover today, and so we're not going to waste any time. Welcome, Dr. Wilmot.
Welcome. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for taking the time out to join me today and share your story, share your experiences, as well as sharing your passion. So let's jump right in. Tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself. Where does it all begin for you?
That's a great question. I've pondered how many times I've probably said, this is the beginning of this is the beginning of where I start. And I guess you could interpret it that I've had multiple beginnings, specifically three. I don't want to go like I'm in a soul searching journey, but each I think has been distinct from the previous. If I was to pinpoint where it really starts, it's towards the end of my undergraduate tenure.
Okay.
I went to the University of Toronto, and I was exposed to a lot of diversity when it came to both racial diversity, gender diversity, sexual diversity, and coming from a Caribbean background, I was also kind of exposed to a Caribbean upbringing in terms of learning about my history, and it allowed me to be curious about the human mind and how diverse it is, how it operates, not just within the local context, but within our global community. And what we don't know as well is what also inspired my curiosity. And then the next beginning happens in graduate school when I began where I started in at the University of Waterloo, which is hence where I was living, and that place wasn't as diverse. And so as I began to venture into academic research in graduate school, I realized that I was losing so much of my connection with the community as I was doing more research on the community. Then one day my graduate advisor says, "Hey, I'm going to Ohio State, and would you like to come with me?" And I was like, that's interesting. I'm not a huge football fan. I mean, even though I'll say go Buckeyes, I'm interested. I'm not too big of a college football fan. And that led me to finish the rest of my graduate career at Ohio State. Shortly after I finished, the pandemic hit, and I feel like that was my new horizon coming to the forefront, because it got the job which I'm at now allowed me to be a community advocate, and also still apply some of my doctoral skills in research and in and in the curiosity of science when it comes to the mind.
So that's interesting. So I talk a lot to people about opportunities, right? Mm-hmm. And going to Ohio State was just this chance experience that presented itself. And you had an opportunity to say, no, I don't want to go. I don't like football. Or yes, why not? And so I always am interested in why people choose to say yes to things that present themselves. And I'm talking to the psychologist here. So why is it that you decided to say yes when, honestly, it could have been a big no because you had no interest to really go over there at all?
Yeah, I feel like part of it is a curiosity of mine to be in new contexts that afford an opportunity for me to get a sense of how do specific contextual factors affect the way people approach diversity.
Mm.
And living in Waterloo, I found out quickly how kind of the rural lifestyle kind of affects people's understandings of race, understandings of sexuality. And so going to Ohio State, where it is both a a college town, so there is students who come from different backgrounds, a lot from the rural areas, but also from out of state. That allowed for me as curious as it can be, and living in the States for the first time, I think gave me a sense that I can balance the amount of time I can spend in research while also building up my professional career as an academic.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love the fact that you're okay with being uncomfortable until you get comfortable. And
Yes.
sometimes that means taking a risk, right? You know, when you should say no, you say yes, and you say, why not? Let's just go for it and see what happens. And as you stated, Waterloo was pretty small, pretty rural, and not very diverse at all, considering where you came from in Toronto. So maybe going to Ohio State was more like kind of going home a little bit, right?
Yeah, I could say it's almost like the Goldilocks, just right porridge. Like,
Yeah.
because even Toronto, there was just the big city was also a little too much for me at times.
So let's talk a little bit about the work that you do right now, and then we'll dive into, as you talk about a lot about context and why what you do makes sense in the context of the world that we live in right now. So talk about what you do now in your current work.
So currently, I do work in HIV, STI community education, and that spans from as simple as a table at an event that provides resources to presentations at conferences about um, about the research in the new research that's in HIV treatment and prevention. And I've been able to integrate some of my research back in graduate school on institutional stigma
Mhm.
and provide a context for which we can understand why that we still are dealing with an epidemic, even in the context of a larger pandemic. And so that has allowed me to both integrate and be a resource for people in the community, but also a resource for people who work in public health institutions.
Are we talking about HIV and STIs enough?
That's a good question. I feel like we are talking about it more now that we've been in this pandemic, but I still think we need to talk about it just a little bit more and with a little bit more urgency.
Yeah, and that was gonna be my next question. So I think 15 years ago, we talked about HIV, AIDS, STIs in a particular way.
Yeah.
How should we be talking about it differently now, especially since we've been in it for a longer period of time?
Yes. So to for us now, we've had a wealth of progress
Mhm.
in the field of HIV treatment and prevention. I think to the point where we need to have a conversation of how can we best educate our communities about these advancements, but also ask the community, how can we best implement these advancements? Because now we're at a point where we are looking at not just having a one pill a day, which has been a result of just the tireless effort of clinical research, but also like we are looking towards the possibility of having long acting, what I call a long acting injectable medication. So a person doesn't have to be taking a pill once a day. They can be taking a shot once every 2 months.
Wow.
And so it's like having that conversation of what does that look like? And does that allow us to move towards possibly ending the epidemic within our lifetime?
Wow, that's powerful. I think most people don't really think about, if you don't know anybody, if you're not informed, that that one pill a day is a part of your daily life, and shifting away from that changes the quality of life. I think it opens up an avenue to do and be some things that you can't do when you're tied to taking medications every day, certain times of the day. And if you skip a pill, it's like, the whole world may end, because it's like it sets you back, right? So now we're talking about injectables. So this information, I don't think is, I like to say, sexy. It's not something that people talk about all the time. It's not conversation at the dinner tables. We don't see commercials about this, right? So we got to amp this up, especially in the Black and brown communities.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
sorry.
So thank you. I mean, you're doing the work.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
So let's go a little bit deeper. I also know you have created a paradigm called, and you correct me if I say this wrong, Tabula Rasta. Did I say that correct?
That's on the money. That's on the money. Yep.
All right. So share more about this paradigm. What is it?
So for me, Tabula Rasta really conceptualizes how does one redefine their self and their community. And I, for full disclosure, borrowed part of it from the concept of John Locke talks about, the Tabula Rasa, which means blank slate. And it's the idea that we all come into the world with a blank slate. However, in the same breath, John Locke also believed that Africans were inferior to other races. So we can't really say that everyone came into the world with a blank slate if you have that attitude of different groups. So for me, I am taking the concept of Tabula Rasa and adding the Rasta part to it, because it embeds the part of the philosophies of Rastafarianism, in that in order for us to redefine ourselves and our communities, we need to harvest the value of equity and consume both the itality, as Rastas will say, the itality, whether it's in food, whether it's in love for self and community, love for the spirituality of nature. So the need to consume itality in the form of food, in the form of love for self, the love for community, and then also being conscious of the injustices and the inequities that provide a barrier for us to even exist in our authentic selves. And that is often demonstrated in the Rastafarian tradition by modifying kind of the English language to remove things that can be seen as stigmatizing and that further create injustices.
Wow. So now I've got a whole bunch of questions. I don't even know which one I want to start with. Wow. So I'm going to start with this one, because I know you said the word conscious, right? And I know we oftentimes talk about showing up, being present, as your authentic self. And in this lane of diversity, this sweep of the world of equity and diversity and inclusion, how do we show up authentically as ourselves in this world, considering there still are pressures to mimic aspects of life and behaviors that are acceptable, so to speak, especially depending on where you are. I think I'm here in the South. There's this Midwestern belief of what's acceptable, which is different from what we see in California or New York, or definitely from a whole nother country. So this idea of being conscious of who you are, being authentically yourself, considering there are external pressures that are forcing people to assimilate or to be bound to a certain way of living, right? So how do we fight all these factors, although we want to be ourselves authentically?
Right. It's a definitely a tough avenue, in that there are, like you said, there are the external pressures. I think it starts mainly with understanding the spaces in which you can begin to think critically about your identity, or the identity that you are giving off, and how that is connected to wanting, to certain motivations that we have, for presenting ourselves. So if I'm in I'm in the Midwest, I live in the Midwest, and I recognize the differences in how people um, approach conversations, here, like especially in Ohio, about different topics, um, like sexuality, gender, um, and that approach I've seen, like, take a certain direction that I realize I'm not necessarily comfortable in that sphere, because it it is not where it's not what I've been used to. Whereas in Toronto, when I lived in Toronto, sexuality, gender, race, that everyone, I feel like a lot of folks are willing to have conversations from different vantage points, and be okay that there are these differences. And I feel like once we recognize that we have these differences, it gives more opportunity for folks who are in a space where they can, where they're just trying to figure out themselves, to be um, able to see that there is an existence of someone, or some culture that represents them.
Would you say it's okay to be uncomfortable?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I think that gives that signals to us how much our how much investment we have in possibly just one part of ourselves, and not discovering that there is another aspect of us that we can tap into and appreciate. Because identity is not as stable as we make it to be, and that can sometimes be our Achilles heel, when we take, whether we even just visit a place, overseas for just a short period of time, that sense of uncomfortability, that, oh, I'm in a country where I can't, where I don't know, a word of the language. That sense of discomfort can also be a sense of opportunity to um, alter one's identity,
Yeah.
learn something new.
And I know you talk about in Tabula Rasa is about finding that essential balance.
Yes.
So would you say that uncomfortability is also a part of that, as we are striving or thriving for to live in this uncertainty of life?
Yes, absolutely. I think that that balance allows for us to really hone in on what are the essentials to that can help us on our journey, and the vitality that comes from being a and I try to use this often more, is the vitality of that comes with being a student. You want, like, as a student in school, like, you want to know, like, what is the application of what I'm learning that I can consume and then produce within the world.
Yeah. Is there a way, and I'm just asking because the educator that works at Ohio State and this change agent that's helping people to create balance through Tabula Rasta, is there a way you're able to bridge those two together?
Yes, in many ways, I feel like where I'm situated at currently as an HIV and STI educator is, I want to allow for people to no longer separate their identities from HIV, STI, whether they're living with it or not,
Mm-hmm.
but to develop a sense that through not just through empathy and understanding the inequities that exist within HIV, that they can modify to a certain degree their identity to identify with those who are living with HIV and work towards correcting those inequities that exist. And so there is some overlap that is happening between the two, and I'm excited because I think this will allow for us to really change the course of the way we approach diseases, infectious diseases like HIV and STIs, in a way that I don't think has been done before.
Yeah. And so I mentioned in the intro, you are multi-talented. So as you all see, he's got a lot of things going on, very brilliant young man. And in addition, he's also a musician. So I want to talk because I want to bring it all out. So talk a little bit about how important music is to you.
Music is my connection to spirituality, the spirituality that I, grew up learning about in the church, and I continue to do as a musician at my church, Blue Ocean Faith Columbus, and it's also been an opportunity for me to learn how to connect my spirituality with that of others, because there are many of us at our church who come from different walks of life and have grown to understand diversity in a way that I would love for the world to see.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm gonna have to come up there one day and check you out.
Yeah.
I'll judge you. I'll say A or B minus. I know it's good, but I'll just be the judge. In addition to that, you also are fluent in English and Swahili and the Duolingo conversations. So talk about that.
Wow. Oh, so that came a year ago when I applied to volunteer as a facilitator, and I thought originally I wasn't going to get it because I've been to a couple of the facilitated discussions, and it was amazing to see the fluency of people from different of different languages.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I got the call, and it's been a great opportunity to see how open people are to learning a language and being aware that it's a process. For me, like, Swahili has always been an interesting an interesting language for me, because when I lived in Toronto, occasionally during the church services I attended with my family, there would be a choir from a neighboring church that was predominantly Tanzanian, and they would always teach us songs in Swahili. So there was that initial curiosity that eventually blossomed into Duolingo, and then now as a facilitator, I love to, as they say, in terms of teaching, kujifunza, and with many of my students.
Wow. I told you guys I'm multi-talented. I mean, it's a great catch here, people. Now, let's go a little bit more personal. With all the things that you do and all the talents that you have had or that you currently have, there has to be a person or a group of people that have influenced you. So who has had the greatest impact on you in your life?
Ooh, for me, there are a few names that come to mind.
Okay.
First and foremost, my undergraduate research advisors, Doctors Michael Inslet and Dr. Liz Page Gould at the University of Toronto. I don't think I understood back then when I was an undergrad my potential, because I felt like I had a good grasp on my education, but not on my curiosity. And I think they brought a lot of that out through their guidance on learning how to research and form critical thoughts in psychology. And those, I think, have been and continue to be instrumental in the way I approach questions in my field, as well as in my advocacy work. And then there's, of course, my graduate advisors, Dr. Berkseeker, Dr. Hilary Berkseeker, and Dr. Steve Spencer. They came from the kind of stereotype threat tradition by Claude Steele, and so I was able to learn a lot about how to translate research into interventions. And then currently, really, like the Black community advocates whom I've had the pleasure of collaborating with and sharing space, and some of whom have pointed me in the direction of the Black Doctoral Network, which I'm racing today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I can't forget my current collaborator and my co-author on a book, Dr. Jesse Sanders. We have been sharing some great space together as community advocates, especially in the realm of mental health. Yeah, and we're excited for when our book launches in May.
So when we think about your career and what you're currently doing, what's one thing you wish you would have known a little bit earlier?
I wish I'd learned how to balance my studies and my career development, because I think I recognize now how separate they were and not necessarily one and the same. Especially while I was in graduate school. As I mentioned, I went to a rural part of Ontario, that is Waterloo, and I was the only Black student in the whole psychology department. That's graduate students and faculty.
Wow.
Yeah. And especially in my first 2 years, there was a lot. And part of it was the pressure I created for myself, but a lot of the kind of unspoken pressure to prove myself right off the cuff.
Yeah.
Through publishing research papers, there's the publish or perish mentality that can wear on and kind of narrow the scope of opportunity. And It wasn't until later on in my graduate career that I started to realize that there's more to this this goal that I'm pursuing in terms of a PhD. There's more to life and to career development than just publishing papers and um, and doing well within the confines of the institution.
Yeah. For those of you all that are in academia, you understand how the machine works. So you know exactly what he's talking about pushing out those papers and getting published. What would you say has been your biggest accomplishment to date?
I mean, this book that Dr. Jesse and I are currently about to publish, I would say is my greatest accomplishment, because I think it's allowed for the both of us to tap into a sense of our community where it is now and where it can go. And I think the combination of Dr. Jesse, who is a clinical psychologist, and myself, who's trained in the tradition of social psychology, adds just a unique, like, curiosity for I think potential readers of, like, how do these two, like, how are these two, like, put together a clear and cohesive book with coming from different traditions within psychology. So yeah. I think that this is going to be my greatest achievement.
If not, so when are we expecting this book to drop? Do we have a date?
Yes, May 21st is when the book launches. We'll have a book release party, and that's when it will be available, both as a hard copy as well as an ebook, and we're also looking into the possibility of an audiobook.
Awesome. Well, listen, make sure we stay connected so we can get that information out to all the BDN members, because I'm sure there are people in the field that would love to get a copy of that and connect with you with this great work.
Yeah. Our book is titled You and What Army? Redefining Self and Community. And we currently have a Facebook page as well. So yeah.
Wow, that already sounds powerful. I like the title. Wow. If you had one wish, what would it be?
When I saw this question, I was like, I don't even think I've talked to my partner about this question. This was like really, really personal, but I love it. Yeah, I think for me, you know, within the combining all of the experiences I've been through, the experiences that have been part of the culture that I've grown up in within a Caribbean household, what I've been taught, it's to eliminate all racial disparity gaps and their psychological effects.
Yeah. I'm glad that you added that second part to that, because it gives significant value and presence to what happens when we have those things. I think some people just want to say, just move on, get over it. You're not there anymore, but there are effects. And as a psychologist, you understand some of those emotional impacts that happen when we have these racial disparities that many of us have to encounter. But yeah, we have this level of resilience, right? We navigate through it, we push through, but in what condition do we show up in the world after having gone through all those things?
Yes.
I think that's a great wish. I can't grant it, but it was a great question, right?
Yeah.
So what's next for you? I know we talked about the book. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
I see myself both continuing to expand upon the book. Currently, I'm looking into how to apply not just this book within the context of book clubs, but also offering tangible tools that can assist one in both redefining oneself in the community. That's also been a motivation why um, I recently got certified as a mental health first aid instructor, and that is a tool and a service that I can offer that will allow for folks to be cognizant of the ways in which they can offer help during mental health challenges that we often unfortunately write off or respond in a not so helpful way.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. I do believe that when people have mental health crises, so to speak, sometimes they just struggle because they don't have the tools. They just don't have the tools, and they don't have access to other people that can support them. And so we sometimes suffer in silence. And then that leads to even, going into deeper depression or whatever the moment may be that we have to deal with. And nobody should be having to deal with that alone. So I think you offering those, sometimes they're just simple tools.
Yeah.
But just given the information, I think it's going to be the critical piece. So I'm excited about, what you're going to be doing. You're a young man, you got a long life to live. And so I'm excited about all the great things you're going to be doing in the future to really just help the community. Let's talk about BDN. We're excited to have you. I mean, to have brilliant minds like yourself. And sometimes people just fall in our lap, right? And now here you are on this great opportunity to share with us. Talk about your relationship with BDN and what you're looking for as a member.
I would say my relationship has been tremendous. And that's speaking from someone who has only just begun to knock on the door of opportunity that this community has offered. Your team has like extended, I believe, like a tremendously comforting hand of fellowship. One through your previous invitation to speak on critical race theory, and just the opportunity that I see with presenting at conferences. And so I feel like I'm just scratching the surface, and I am just excited to be a part of this space where we have conversations about work-life balance, and learning, looking at careers beyond just the ivory tower that we're often preached upon to strive for. And I want to give a shout out to my friend, Dr. Nicole Bowman Glover, who really championed for me to be part of this network. And it's just been phenomenal to see the wealth of knowledge and the personability that people have shown on talks like this.
Well, listen, first of all, let me say thank you, Nicole. We appreciate you for sharing with him. And thank you, Dr. Wilmot, for accepting to be a member of BDN. Again, we are excited to have members like yourself who are doing tremendous work out there in the community, hoping to make a difference, just to do their part in this world. And thank you for showing up presently and authentically as yourself, because I think that's what's going to really make the difference. Also, thank you for taking time out, for sharing with us today, doing this interview. If you don't mind, could you please share with our viewers and our listeners where they can go to learn more about you and all the great things that you're doing?
Easy. www.heydrmatt, DRMATT.com.
It's simple, guys. Hey, Dr. Matt. I've already been on there. I checked him out. It's legit. It's active. So go and follow Dr. Matt. We're going to call him Dr. Matt now because he's our friend. So he's no longer, we can't call him Dr. Wilmot. He's our friend. Dr. Matt, go follow him. And while you're following him, be sure to go follow us as well on the Black Doctoral Network. Connect with us on all of our social media channels. We would love to have and share with you. Now, for now, we are done. Dr. Wilmot has come and deposited some great things into us. So we hope you come back next time for another great interview. But until then, be sure to like, share, subscribe. And I always tell you, go and tell somebody about BDN. Let's grow this family of love and of supporters, because we need it to help build up the community of Black academics. Until then, guys, be safe, be blessed, and I will see you next time.